When Dr. Adrian Keller rented the office on Hawthorne Street, no one questioned it. The building already housed a dentist, a small accounting firm, and a travel agency that had not updated its window display since 2008. A therapist moving in seemed ordinary. His brass nameplate appeared on the door one Monday morning. Dr. Adrian Keller, clinical psychologist. By appointment only. The sign was tasteful, discreet, professional, but by the end of the first month, something felt off. Mrs. Donnelly, who ran the bakery across the street, noticed first. "No one ever goes in," she told her husband one evening. "I sit by that window all day. Not one patient." Her husband shrugged. "Maybe evenings." So she watched in the evenings. Lights came on at exactly 7 p.m. every weekday. They went off at exactly 11 p.m. But no one entered, and no one left. Not once. Inside the office, however, the sounds were unmistakable. Voices, muffled conversations, sometimes heated, sometimes tearful, sometimes pleading. The accountant next door heard them through the thin walls. At first, he assumed clients were using the back stairwell. Then one night, while staying late to finish payroll, he heard something clearer. A woman crying. Then Dr. Keller's voice, calm and steady. "You're safe here," he said. There was a pause. Then the woman replied, "You said that last time." The accountant frowned. Last time? He checked the hallway. The corridor was empty. Dr. Keller's door was closed. No shadows beneath it. No movement. The crying continued for several minutes, then stopped abruptly. At 11 p.m., the lights went out. Silence. The next morning, the building manager checked the security footage. Only one person had entered the office the night before, Dr. Keller, and he had not left until 11:02 p.m. alone. When the manager mentioned it casually a few days later, Dr. Keller smiled politely. "My patients value discretion," he said. "Some use alternative entrances." "There aren't any," the manager replied. Dr. Keller's smile did not fade. "Of course." She moved closer to the floor, pressing her ear against it. Footsteps. A chair scraping. A man speaking, low and strained. "I don't remember what happened after I left," Dr. Keller replied. "That's why you're here." Clara checked the street through her window. No cars had parked. No doors had opened. The building's entrance camera, visible from her laptop through the shared security app, showed nothing. The man's voice grew louder. "You said I would stop waking up there." "Progress takes time," Dr. Keller said. "Where is there?" the man demanded. Silence followed. Then something heavy struck the wall. Clara jumped. She rushed downstairs. The hallway outside the office was empty. The door was locked. No sound from within. She stood there for several seconds, then slowly returned upstairs. The next day, Clara introduced herself to Dr. Keller. He was younger than she expected. Mid-30s. Neatly dressed. Calm eyes. Too calm. "I hope I'm not disturbing you with my sessions," he said before she could mention it. Clara hesitated. "How many patients do you see?" He tilted his head slightly. "As many as need help." "That many? More than you'd think." His gaze lingered a moment too long. That night, the voices returned. Different voice. Female. "You promised I wouldn't go back." Dr. Keller's tone remained steady. "You only go back when you resist." Clara felt her skin prickle. "Resist what?" The woman began sobbing. Then came a phrase that made Clara's blood run cold. "I don't think I ever left." Clara grabbed her phone and opened the security feed again. The hallway camera showed Dr. Keller entering his office at 6:58 p.m. No one else. The footage continued in silence. The crying below intensified. Clara's chest tightened. She wasn't imagining it. There were multiple voices. Distinct. Clear. Desperate. But no one was physically there. At 10:47 p.m., the crying turned to screaming. A loud crash followed. Clara ran downstairs again, this time without hesitation. She banged on the office door. "Dr. Keller, is everything all right?" The screaming stopped instantly. Complete silence. After a moment, the door opened. Dr. Keller stood there alone. His office was immaculate. 2 chairs, a couch, a desk. No overturned furniture. No signs of struggle. "You must be sensitive to sound," he said gently. Clara looked past him. On the couch, the cushions were slightly indented, as if someone had just stood up. "Who was here?" she asked quietly. Dr. Keller's expression shifted. "Just slightly." "Clara," he said. She froze. I don't remember telling you my name. His smile returned. You didn't. The lights flickered once. Only once. Then steadied. Clara stepped back slowly. From somewhere deep inside the office, though no one else stood there, a faint whisper drifted toward her. Don't leave. The door closed softly in her face. And that was the first night Clara realized something far worse than a dishonest therapist was operating on Hawthorne Street. Dr. Adrian Keller did have patients. The question was whether they had ever walked into that building at all. Clara didn't sleep that night. That whisper, don't leave, just kept echoing in her mind. It wasn't the sound itself, but the feeling behind it. It wasn't a threat, it was a warning. By morning, she knew she couldn't just let it go. She needed proof, something solid, something she could show someone without sounding like she was losing her mind. Her first move was the building records. The landlord was an old-school guy who kept tenant files from years ago in a dusty metal cabinet in the storage room. Clara spun a story about researching the building's history for a writing project. He bought it and waved her in. Dr. Adrian Keller's lease was only 6 months old, nothing unusual there. But then something else caught her eye. The suite he rented, 3B, had previously been occupied by another therapist, Dr. Martin Hale. That afternoon, Clara dove into the internet, searching for Dr. Hale. It was almost a dead end. No professional website, no online listings, just a ghost. Then she found it. A single, archived newspaper article from 3 years ago. It was a short piece, just 6 paragraphs long. The headline read, Local Therapist Missing. The article said Dr. Martin Hale had vanished from his Hawthorne Street office after a late evening session. The office was found unlocked, but there were no signs of a struggle. The building's security footage was a blank. It showed no one entering or leaving after 8:12 p.m. He was never seen again. Clara read the article twice, her blood running cold. The office number was the same as Keller's. That night, she decided to escalate things. She took her phone, propped it up against the air vent that connected her apartment to his office below, and hit record. At 8:03 p.m., the voices started. It was a man this time, his voice strained. You said this would end. Dr. Keller's reply was soft, eerily calm. It has ended. You just haven't accepted it. I can still see the room, the man said, his voice trembling. The couch, the clock. You're sitting there. Clara felt her own pulse quicken, her hand gripping the edge of her desk. The man continued, but I remember walking out. You did, Keller said, his tone perfectly even. Then why am I back? There was a long, heavy pause. Then Keller spoke again, his voice dropping lower, sending a shiver down Clara's spine. Because you never truly left. At 9:22 p.m., something new happened. A second voice cut in, overlapping the first. It was faint, disoriented. Is this another session? The first man started to panic. Who's that? Who else is here? Keller didn't answer either of them. Instead, he said something that made Clara's world tilt on its axis. Integration takes patience. The recording suddenly crackled with a burst of static, and then silence. Clara immediately replayed the audio. The voices were clear, undeniable. But something was deeply wrong. That second voice. It didn't sound distant, like someone else in the room. It sounded layered, almost like it was coming from the same throat as the first. The next morning, Clara went straight to the landlord, asking to see the security system again. She scrolled back through 6 solid months of footage. Every single evening told the same sterile story. Dr. Keller entering his office alone. The lights turning on. Hours later, the lights turning off. Him leaving, again alone. There were no visitors. No deliveries. No late-night appointments. Nothing. Except for one night. 3 months earlier. At exactly 8:12 p.m., the camera feed glitched. The screen filled with static for 12 seconds. When the image returned, Keller was suddenly already inside his office. But the timestamp had jumped forward by 7 minutes. A 7-minute gap. Clara checked the date on the recording. It was the exact anniversary of Dr. Martin Hale's disappearance. Her stomach twisted into a knot. That evening, she did something reckless. She knew she had to. At 10:55 p.m., just minutes before the building's official closing time, she went downstairs and waited in the hallway outside Keller's office. The corridor was dim, quiet. At exactly 11 p.m., the lights inside his office went out. The handle turned. Keller stepped into the hallway, locking the door behind him. He looked up and saw her. He didn't seem surprised at all. Clara, he said, his voice gentle. as if he'd been expecting her. "We need to talk," she managed to say, her own voice steadier than she felt. They stood facing each other under the flickering fluorescent light. "You're recording the sessions," he said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Clara felt her breath catch in her throat. "You can hear them too," she shot back. "So don't pretend." He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, he sighed, turned, and unlocked the office door again. "Come in." The room was colder than she imagined. The air was heavy still. A single couch faced his empty chair, a small table between them. There were no diplomas on the walls, no family photos, none of the usual therapist decor. There was only a clock on the wall. Ticking, ticking, ticking. "Sit," Keller said. Clara remained standing, her arms crossed. "You don't have patience," she said, the words tumbling out. "Not living ones." Keller's expression didn't so much as flicker. "You believe they're dead?" "I think they never left this room." He calmly folded his hands on his desk. "Grief creates echoes, Clara," he said, his voice like a clinical lecture. "So does guilt." "That's not an answer." He leaned back slightly in his chair. "Dr. Martin Hale was my mentor." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. "He was treating a patient," Keller continued, "who suffered from severe dissociation after a violent accident. This patient was trapped, convinced he was reliving the same hour over and over again. Martin decided to try an experimental method. He called it deep immersion therapy. The idea was to confront the traumatic memory directly, to face it until it lost its power. And, Clara whispered, and the patient stopped responding. Stopped responding how? He died. The word hung in the air between them, heavy and final. "Cardiac arrest," Keller elaborated. "Stress-induced. It happened right here, during a session." Martin blamed himself completely. Clara struggled to swallow, her mouth suddenly dry. "What does that have to do with you?" Keller's gaze shifted from her to the empty couch. Martin believed the mind could fracture under extreme guilt, that fragments of it could detach and persist. After his patient's death, he began hearing the man's voice. Clara stared at him. "You're saying he imagined it?" He said it felt real. The clock on the wall kept ticking, each second stretching into an eternity. "What happened the night he disappeared?" Clara asked, needing to know the final piece of the puzzle. Keller looked directly at her again, his eyes holding hers. "I was here." The room seemed to shrink. "You were his patient?" she asked slowly. "Yes." "For what?" "For believing I caused someone's death." Silence settled between them. Clara felt the weight of it. "You took over his office," she said carefully, "after he vanished. He insisted I continue the work." "Work on who?" Keller's eyes moved back to the couch. "On them." A faint sound drifted through the room. A whisper. Clara heard it clearly now. Not from the walls. Not from beneath the floor. From the air itself. "You promised," it said. Clara turned toward the couch. The cushions sank. Just slightly. As if someone had sat down. The temperature dropped. Her breath fogged faintly. "You see," Keller said softly. The whisper grew louder. "You said we could leave." "We are leaving," Keller replied, voice steady. Clara stepped backward toward the door. "Who are you talking to?" Keller's gaze shifted to her. "You." The word struck like a blow. Clara shook her head. "That's not possible." "You moved into this building 3 months ago," he continued calmly. The same week the voices became louder. "No, you began hearing them immediately. That's because you're unfinished." The clock stopped ticking. The room fell silent. Clara's mind raced. Memories flickered. Moving boxes. A lease agreement. But before that, there was a gap. A blank space where something should have been. She tried to recall her last apartment. Her last client. Her last clear memory before Hawthorne Street. Nothing came. "You've been coming here every night," Keller said gently. "You just don't remember leaving." Clara's knees weakened. "That's not true. You sit on that couch. You tell me about the accident." "What accident?" she whispered. His voice softened further. "The one on Route 17. 3 months ago." Her vision blurred. Rain. Headlights. A sharp turn. Metal folding inward. A man shouting her name. Her hands on the wheel. And then darkness. "You survived," Keller continued. The other driver did not. Her breath came in shallow bursts. "No. You've been trying to rewrite the moment. To convince yourself you walked away untouched." The couch dipped deeper. A shape began to form in the air above it. Not solid. Not fully visible. But present. The whisper became layered. Multiple voices overlapping. "You said we were safe. You said it ended." You said we left. Clara felt something pull at her chest. Not physically, internally, as if part of her was being drawn toward the couch. I'm alive, she insisted weakly. Keller's expression held something almost like pity. You are, he said, but not all of you. The office lights flickered. Clara looked down at her hands. They appeared faint, edges blurring, like mist in weak sunlight. You split, Keller continued quietly. The part that carried the guilt stayed here. The rest of you moved on. The whispers grew desperate. Don't leave. The same words from that first night. Not a warning, a plea. Clara understood then. She was not the observer. She was the echo, the unfinished session, the part that refused to accept what happened. Keller stepped forward. You can go now, he said. The clock resumed ticking. Slow, steady. The shape on the couch began to dissolve. The whispers softened. Clara felt the pull intensify. Terror surged. If I go, she asked, voice trembling, what happens to you? Keller's eyes darkened slightly. I stay. Why? Because I am not finished either. The air thinned around her. The office blurred. The couch, the desk, the walls. Everything fading. The last thing Clara saw was Dr. Adrian Keller standing alone in the room, listening, waiting for the next voice, the next echo, the next patient who would never walk through the door. And the next night, at exactly 7 p.m., the lights on Hawthorne Street turned on again. Voices drifted softly through the walls, as they always did, as they always would.